Thank you for tuning in. You know, we were having this chat debate on which is the best infographic for what to use when in Office 365. So we figured, why don't we just settle this on Microsoft Teams and go at it? I know there's tons of infographics out there. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. But just to make sure you know what we're talking about, guys, maybe you want to pipe in which infographic that's been out there around Office 365?
Well, I guess there's the famous periodic table, right?
There's
I
also the
wonder if
wagon wheel that ShareGate started a number of years ago. I think when Office 365 was in much simpler times, when it was basically just OneDrive, SharePoint, Outlook, and Skype. That was pretty much it.
Got it. And we created one a few years ago too when groups first came out. So, and then we layered in teams, but there's a couple others out there, right, Patrick?
Yes, I did mine like that. My idea basically was to simplify as much as it can be by putting almost 5 or 6 categories of usage and putting all the tools in this very simple category.
So Matt, what spurred you to put together that periodic table? I know that I feel like that's the most popular one. I hope you made money from it. What motivated you to put that together?
I will give credit where it's due. The wheels that we've seen out there, the first one coming from Benjamin Nyland at ShareGate, and then a couple others afterwards, were really good in showing everything that was there, but did not provide me what I needed for a couple clients on showing context and like relationships of what apps do which kinds of things. So I just kind of printed out the names in little squares and cut them up and organized them, at a Starbucks for a couple hours after work one day, and built out what ended up being the periodic table. And the only reason it's called that is because the grouping happened to look like that. The shape was, something everybody from a chemistry intro class could take. But it was just that there's so much stuff out there, and there needed to be a reasonably simple way to put it out there. The funny part is that I get so much feedback as to, this is amazing, it's so simple, thank you, and wow, this is so complex, stop making it harder than it needs to be. So it really depends on who you are and what your needs are, because my feedback ranges from either love it or hate it. There's no neutral.
I was just going to say, I do a lot of work with some scientific organizations in Australia, and as soon as they see it, it's like, oh, science, we get science.
Yeah, I know, right? I hated chemistry too. That's kind of the irony. I'm an engineer, but I hated chemistry.
So is that something what you guys advise customers? Essentially, hey, what should I use when? Go look at the infographic. So what's your take on all this?
Well, Simon, how do you do it internally?
We don't use it. It's
yeah, and that's
controversial bit. Kind of been there, right? The challenge is all these things are really great visuals, and I think certain people engage with certain visual things. But if you take a tube map, you've got a purpose. You've got to get from A to B, and you can get there in loads of different ways. The challenge with Office 365, it's really hard to define the purpose. So when people see a plan like the periodic table or the wheels of fortune or whatever they might be called, they just see applications, but they really struggle to gel and understand what the purpose is. So we tried it. We rehashed our intranet along a periodic table kind of way, and people just didn't follow it. They just didn't engage with it. They just want to understand purpose and how to get work done.
I use it mostly as a starting point, as Simon said, to engage the clients or customers, to say, okay, it looks like very complicated, but with when you get some sense of usage behind the tools, then it's much easier to understand and to communicate to your end user.
I find when I talk to IT executives and professionals that showing the different graphics to show basically here's all the tools, here's all the value you get is quite beneficial for them. But when I show it to end users, their eyes just either go wide with fear or glaze over. So what I tend to do is actually say, don't believe anything you see online with these infographics. Don't read any articles. Don't look at any videos, including myself. I will flat out say, don't believe anything you see from me, because none of it has context as to what you need and what your organization requires and the features it uses. So that's where I say, like, yeah, these graphics are great to adapt and use, but pick and choose what you need and show that picture.
Yes.
I think a lot of you hit the nail on the head, right? Like, regardless if this infographic, this topic, or any infographics out there, I think it's a great attention grabber, where it's visual, it's colorful. I mean, even our good friend Louise would make her sketch notes. That's great. It's brilliant. But once you hook people in, you get the attention, and then you can drill down and talk about what are you guys trying to do? What are you doing today? And how can we bridge that gap, right? So I think it's a good foot in the door. But past that, all of you are exactly right, is how do you make it purposeful so people can see the context as to what they do day to day and get their jobs done faster, better, sooner.
And I think as people put these kind of resources out there, the intent is to start as a simple straw man, because there's nothing more frustrating than walking into a committee room with a group of people that are going to be working on a modern workplace design, and everybody is going to throw ideas at a whiteboard. You kind of have to have something to start with and say, let's just define the concept first and not waste our time doing that and work with it from there. And I think, I wanted to try to boil this stuff down to be as simple as possible. When we rolled out the fact that you could filter the table by license type, there are a lot of nuances to that. So a lot of people got really annoyed by the, hey, Teams isn't in government yet. And you didn't include it in government. And I'm like, well, it's only in GCC, and that's only one of 3 of the, the tiers in government. It's not in DoD and high yet. So I don't even consider it to be in government yet. You could get a thesis, you get a PhD just on Microsoft licensing. So taking, some complex topic like that and boiling it down to just something digestible like that is not exactly an easy task.
And it's funny you say that, Matt, because there actually used to be a licensing certification for Microsoft. I used to have that myself, and there used to be a dedicated competency for it. When I've actually been doing a bunch of Office 365 customers this week, and when I show them all the different infographics, I actually show all of them, and then I effectively boil it down to lovely smart art. Thank you, PowerPoint. Is effectively communications tools, files and information, managing your work, business applications and data, and it basically in the center, productivity. That's how I tend to boil it down, is pick and choose what you want from those.
Matt, you mentioned a keyword, simplification. So Simon, how in your organization do you guys simplify this? You talk a lot about purpose. So let's say I first join your company, I get onboarded by HR. How are these tools presented to me?
Yeah, so they're presented to you just in time. So we'll introduce the tool that you need to use first. Obviously, email. I mean, everyone's life needs email. It revolves around it. Yeah, and no Teams. Teams is way out on the horizon, right? So we introduce them tool by tool, right? So they need to be able to process email. So we introduce them to Outlook and the various flavors of Outlook. They need to do ERP things. I mean, the first thing you need to do is do the sensible HR stuff and work out that you need to account for every 6 seconds of your life with a timesheet. You work that process through and you introduce the tools gradually, and then within the end of the week, within onboarding, they've been introduced to maybe 6 or 7 of the key tools from Office 365, plus the various engineering applications that they need to get their job done.
So it's not a distinct, it's in context, right? Depending on what they're doing, like you mentioned, just in time. It's not like a one day, here's Office 365, when to use what. But it's more when you come in, when you need to email the customer, Outlook. When you need to do a call, Teams. Your files, it syncs with OneDrive. It's in context with their day-to-day job.
Yeah, exactly. And if you break their flow, that's when the disruption and the disengagement from the tooling occurs, and it's really hard to then get them back and actually engaging with the right application.
Yeah.
So if you just do it gently and keep it within the flow, I think that works much easily. But I wanted to say that one of the things with the challenge with all the infographics is Microsoft have made it really hard to visualize the outcome, right? They've made it, because most tools do the same thing, right? You can do task management in Outlook, and you can do it in Planner, and you can do it in Project. You can do. You can
do it in Excel.
They made it really hard for people creating visual assets to go, actually, hey, you want to do your tasks, go here. And that's half the problem. So these infographics can only be shallow because the complexity is way too complex. It's like a tube map on steroids. No one's going to be able to understand what's going on if someone places all the tube maps from New York, Paris, and London on top of each other and tell you to get from A to B. It's just not going to work.
That's a great analogy. And so Patrick, I know you work with a lot of customers, not only in France but around the world. What are some of the tips do you offer as to how to get started and make sense of all this?
I use it, as I said, to simplify, to try to simplify a lot of things. And one way to simplify is to ask customer to choose when, for example, uh, 2 or 3 years ago, there was maybe 3 choice for collaboration. I said to my customer, choose your first choice for collaboration, for example. Nowadays, it's Teams, but as you know, in communication, for example, you can still choose Yammer, you can still choose intranet site with SharePoint. So I use it as well to say to my customer, you have to choose to start on somewhere. Start your first tool for communication, your first tool for collaboration, and for task management as well, because we have so many options in Office 365. That's a great way to simplify as well.
One thing we do here at AvePoint, when somebody gets onboarded, as a part of onboarding, they get like a little. It's a very visual booklet that explains technologies we use, but the purpose of it. So we would say, hey, Yammer is where you meet everybody in the company, and that's where you gain knowledge, engage with people. And the analogy we use, by the way, is Yammer is the company cafeteria. You go out there, you hang out, you talk to people, you chit chat. And then we would say Teams is the conference room. That's where you get work done. Teams is only for a limited group of people. You do calls, you work on documents, you get projects done. And once you produce it, and let's say the broader company needs to see it or needs to access it, that's where we put it in our intranet, which is powered by SharePoint. So our analogy to SharePoint is a company library, right? Where anybody can go there. So if we put it in that simplistic way, and also number 2, define the purpose, and number 3, use analogies, people get the when to use what much easier.
I think what's also important to note is that Office 365 is not the only suite of tools that people use in their data. They will use cost estimation tools, they will use records management tools, they will use CRM. So it's important when defining the what tool to use when is, well, maybe a document doesn't go into SharePoint, maybe the document actually is supposed to go into Tech One ECM or
HP Trim.
Trim, or some other record system, or maybe it's supposed to go into your legal matter system. So it's important to look at the what when not entire job and all those kind of bits. And as Simon was saying, it's about the context.
Great. All right. So this is great convo. So what I'm hearing is Infographic is great. Help start the conversation, simplify it, set the purpose. And I love what Simon says, make sure it's part of the flow of people's day-to-day work. So any parting advice for our colleagues out there listening as to really how to make the most out of the platform, and more importantly, not get too much stuck on this when to use what mindset? Matt?
I would say make your own infographic based on your own context, on your own culture. Definitely.
Awesome. Matt?
I would say the same thing. Shop around, find the display that makes the most sense to you, and customize it to how you need, which is why we even rolled out a customizable version of the table, because, hey, I don't use Dynamics, let's say. We want to use Salesforce instead, something like that. So yeah, I would say that's the big deal. Also, make it available. Kind of funny enough, when I look at the Google Analytics for our table, I've got dozens of company.sharepoint.com referrals, which means that they're embedding it in their SharePoint sites and making it part of their Office 365 or SharePoint, IT homepage. And I'm talking, AvePoint is number 15 of my top referrals, and above that are 3, 4, 5, 6 more of the company.sharepoint.com. So make sure it's available, and don't make it be one of those things that somebody prints out once and puts it up on a wall. Make it be in people's faces to be a constant reminder. And as long as you have it, the company way, people will follow it. It's a nice implicit reminder to follow the rules.
Why is it on your wall?
It's just to memorialize, or to remind people when I'm on a call with them that, hey, that's mine right there.
All right, Lorian? Any parting advice?
Yeah, I think it would be, as I was saying, make it contextualized, factor in other applications and tools that the organization uses, and yeah, take away the applications that you're not using in 365. If you're not using Yammer at all, don't show it in the list. If you're not using Planner because you actually have to use Trello, take Planner out there, put Trello in. You know, list out all the tools you actually use.
Got it. Simon?
Yeah. So if you're going to take stuff out, put a list somewhere saying why you've taken it out, because people are
Yes.
incredibly intelligent. They will search it and they will find it. And Microsoft are really good at making it really easy to find this stuff.
Too easy.
Too easy. My parting advice is this is only a tiny piece of your technology adoption puzzle. It's going to work for X% of your organization. You need to find other channels that resonate with people and then use those things in tandem or in triplicate to make sure you reach your entire organization, your entire audience. So you really got to remember this isn't the single, silver bullet or whatever. It's not going to solve everything. Okay.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks guys for jumping on this call and finally discuss this. So for those watching, continue the conversation. You see our Twitter handles here, or hit us up on LinkedIn, but would love to hear from you if you have any other tips and tricks on how you can adopt or be successful with this platform in your organization. So with that, thank you, and until the next time, bye.